Hello. First of all, I just want to say a brief thing about why I am present here and the autism community. Oh, yes, please. Can we have Joanne, Lara come up as well? Yes, sorry. No, no. Yes, yes, it's the morning section. So just briefly, so my journey with the autism movement in India started July 24th, 2015, because that is the day that my mom passed. And it was a shocking thing that happened to me. She had given me a couple of different directives. I had approximately 20,000 patients in the US, and I was kind of like 10,000 autistic patients around, you know, seeing in double states, having a PT, OT, speech, language center for myself. And I was left with, like, what do I do at this point? So I'm very encouraged and happy to be here in that regard, and I know she's with me today, but because I'm fulfilling that dream that I had to help the autistic community here in India. It's a big deal for me, so thank you again. So, like most of these people on the panel are my friends or soon to be my friends, so I'd like to ask a couple of questions. The first one is for Joanne, Lara. Is there any age limit that you work with? Do you believe that there's a yes, please go ahead and take the mic. Is there any age limit, Joanne?
For the movement?
Yes.
No. I start with 2.5 for the autism movement therapy class. And if I have young students, 2.5 to 5, and then the break off is 5, I go from 5 to about 10, and then from 10 up, unless it's an adult class. Okay. So I do make a division between the classes. I think it's important to make sure that if you have adults in your class, that you're teaching a class with adults. And we don't want 15-year-olds with 3-year-olds or 5-year-olds. So you want to make that distinction.
Okay. So the follow-up question also from the panel was, for the panel is, are there any prerequisites needed for AMT? That goes to you, Joanne.
To teach the AMT class,
yeah.
I have an AMT level 1 online course that is a prerequisite for the certification workshop that's 10 hours and 2 days.
No, I think the prerequisites for the people attending. So like following instructions, do they need to be able to imitate?
Oh, for the students?
Yes.
No, but everybody's welcome. Okay. No, absolutely. That's what we're there for. So we invite everyone. We're honoring everyone.
Okay. And then for Chris, so you're such a strong self-advocate, so I'd like you to answer, as someone who wasn't diagnosed until age 25, what were the difficulties you faced while growing up?
This one's on, yeah? Yeah, it is. In my case, it was mainly social, and the fact that I may have been quite academically capable, but I wouldn't perceive things in the way other people expected me to, in the way that I was supposed to. Quite often, people would drop hints, expect me to get them, and no, even now I don't get hints. Please just say what you mean and mean what you say. And also, there are lots of unwritten social rules as well. It's like, I've heard a number of autistic people saying that being autistic is like playing a game where no one has bothered to tell you the rules. You're just expected to magically know them because everyone else magically knows them. Why would you not know them? And this is often interpreted as rudeness when really it's just that we're unclear about it, and often we're not sure how to ask for guidance, or even what it is that we're supposed to ask for guidance for.
Awesome. So for Anil, for Dr. Kundra, how do you deal with a situation where an individual is engaging in self-injurious behavior or aggressive behavior?
Just come again, please.
Yes, sorry. How do you deal with someone who's doing very aggressive behavior or self-injurious behavior, hurting themselves or others?
See, what happens with us is that there are instances where young adults have severe behavioral issues. So the first rule that I follow is let them be. Do not force them to do anything which they do not wish to do. Try to, instead of stopping the behavior, try to engage them in something that they like to do. So this is something we follow very, religiously, and we have got, children who come or young adults who come to us with very severe behaviors over a period of time because of the environment that we have created, because of the routines that we have set, and because of the structure created, and the diet plan that we have, the Sattvic diet plan. I have found over a period of time the behaviors reduce, sometimes to very rare behaviors, aggressive behaviors happening, especially with either it is a salty behavior or it is self-injurious behavior. These over a period of time peter out, and that has been one of our big achievements, and that's it.
For Stephen Shore. Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about, you were talking about in your lecture about courting and dating. So how is it dating someone that's not on the spectrum? And can you give a personal story, if you will?
Yeah, I certainly can. Oh, yeah, Joanne just told me I need to tell you all that I've been married for 28, I guess about a half year. Yeah, 28 and a half years. 28 and a half years. So for us on the autism spectrum, it's important to, again, work with and appreciate the autistic characteristics. So starting when I was young in grade school, it was always curious to me that all of my friends were older than I was. And then when I got to college, well, people are much less concerned about differences and how much you like everybody else, so I was able to find friends. But then it was off to work, in the world of work, and things kind of closed up again. And I found that all of my friends were from other countries. But I really didn't have any friends that were my own culture. It didn't keep me up at night, but I just thought it was kind of odd, interesting. So then as we move on, when it comes to dating, I look at my situation, and I've been married to my lovely wife from China, Chinese wife, for 28 and a half years. Thank you. So why somebody from China? Why friends from other cultures? And I guess if you want to call age a culture, you put that in there as well. And I think that is because people of the same culture know intimately how you're supposed to behave. And if you behave differently, grade school, it results in bullying. As an adult, people don't want to have much to do with you because they don't understand people like Wenn, Chris, and I. We're just kind of weird, aren't we? What about people from other cultures? Well, they don't have as many of the rules down. And, well, maybe Americans, this is gone, maybe Americans jump up and down and squeal and flap when they balance their worksheets in a bank. It's weird, but maybe that's Americans do that. So you can get away with a little bit more. Also, people from another culture have their own challenges in integrating into a society. So they may be at least tolerant and appreciative of differences. Tony Atwood has research on his website suggesting that the most successful long-term relationships with people on the spectrum are with others having differences. And it may be age, neurocognitive, cultural, whatever the dimension is. So do we try to take that autistic person and make Wenn and Chris more like everybody else, indistinguishable from their peers? Or do we say, this is who they are, and let's work with it? So we have this little nugget, and maybe we might encourage autistic people to consider that. I know many people on the spectrum become very successful when they move to another culture, because all of the missed cues, all of the differences get misattributed to being from another culture. And if you want to call autism a culture, well, then they're right, but people probably aren't thinking about that. So I didn't tell a story. I told it yesterday, actually,
Yes, you
about meeting my wife, but I did
Yes.
give you some of my ideas as to why things might be the way they are.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That was awesome.
Thank you.
So the next question is for Dr. Wenn Lawson. Hi, Wen. So I kind of, this was a question from the audience, but I felt it today, but what does sensory overload feel like, and how do you deal with it?
Sensory overload is very, very, very uncomfortable, and I deal with it by wearing earplugs, sometimes headphones, ear defenders, caps, non-scratchy clothing, all those sorts of things. Practice over many, many years. When I was much younger, I would just curl up in a ball and rock, or not go into assembly at school, not go into the classroom. Lots of things like this as a child, but eventually over time I learned I could stay in a situation where there was lots of noise. Even on the airplane getting here, you know, there were babies that cried, and as a small child, I don't want to upset anybody, I won't do it now, but as a small child, I used to hit another child, make them cry, and then that was over, and I knew what to expect. But if you go around hitting people, it gets you into trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not a good idea.
It's called assault, I believe.
Yeah, not a good idea. So I learned that if you hit someone, you get into trouble. So don't hit them. What do I do instead? I have to avoid, keep away, and sometimes that meant being away from school. I didn't go to school as much as other kids. I was away a lot. So that meant I wasn't learning, so that wasn't helpful. Then I found things like Erlen lenses and other things were really helpful because they, it's like, you know, the Force be with you? Perhaps they don't know that story.
Star Wars.
Star Wars. So I felt like I had protection. I put on my armor. I often wear a squeeze jacket. Do you know what that is? It's not a weighted garment. It's a jacket that's paper thin that I can pump up, and it squishes me. It's lovely. So I feel like noises and other things will bounce off me. But it took me years to find those sorts of things. But it's a bit like temple squeeze machine, possibly, but it's actually a garment I can wear. I can wear it under a shirt, so it's not seen. I can pump it up, and then I can release the air, so that it always works, because I can pump it up again. If you wear a weighted garment, you know, your brain begins to accommodate, and you don't notice it after a time. So it doesn't work as well for me. But there are all of these things, and there's plenty of information online to talk about those things.
When I also noticed you had tattoos, so was that difficult, sensory-wise?
Having a tattoo was wonderful. No.
No,
I wear earplugs and headphones.
Uh-huh.
I've got a great tattoo on my chest.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's wonderful. But I didn't find that overwhelming.
Okay.
It's a single focused sensation, and I quite enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Chris, the next one is for you again. So have you interacted with ABA professionals who are flexible in their practice?
Given that my background is teaching, I don't get much exposure to professionals working in ABA services and so on. Although among the educational staff that I know and have worked with and so on, I think the general attitude is that, yeah, flexibility is just about the most important attributes you could possibly have, particularly in special education. Autistic people do have the reputation of being very rigid and inflexible in their thinking. Well, in my experience, it tends to be school governors and school staff that seem to be the really inflexible ones. Like if you have an autistic child in your school who really struggles to wear the uniform because of a label that's stabbing them in the back of the neck. It's the school that says, no, we won't make very small changes to our uniform policy to accommodate your child. So it's, what I love about special education is that even though autistic people stereotypically are rigid and inflexible, etc., special education is very flexible and very willing, well, when it's done well, obviously, is very willing to adapt to meet the needs of its students. And again, I won't claim to have any kind of expertise in psychiatry or anything like that, but I do know that the principles that we use in special education in terms of flexibility will also work in that field as well, because it's not even about which field you're in. Whichever field you're in, you're working with humans, and humans will respond to people being willing to accommodate their needs.
Thank you, Chris. This is for Dr. Kundra. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, sir. I salute you. I've been a child and adolescent psychiatrist for 20 years approximately, but just the place you have built now, it's beautiful. It really brought some warmth to my heart.
Thank you.
It really did. And I hope we can aspire to do that in the Indian Autism Center, and that's why this program is very dear to my heart. So can you tell us more about the challenges you had faced when you first initially opened?
You want me to talk about the child?
And just challenges.
Huh?
The challenges,
Challenges.
yeah, that you had faced when you initially opened.
So the biggest challenge in running any residential home are the caregivers, because we do not have trained caregivers as such in India. So you will have to rely on training your own caregivers. So that is one big challenge that we overcame. Basically because in the initial stages I hired a girl from England who was a master's in caregiving. So that is how we set some standards, and we have actually built up a team now, a curriculum by which we train caregivers. Class 12 is the basic qualification we look at, and then we train them for 3 months. It's a hands-on training that happens, and apart from the little theoretical knowledge that we impart to the trainees. Then over a period of time, you see what happens is, if a caregiver is there and this is basically the first job they take on, and for them, it's something absolutely new. Autism, they would have heard for the first time when they come to me. And for them to live 24/7, that is the kind of caregiving we have, one-on-one. So to start living with a caregiver, with a child with autism, is a big thing. It's a big sacrifice. And I always feel that I am what I am today. Autism Ashram is what it is today only because of the dedicated team of caregivers we have. And I think those who take to caregiving as a profession, every parent as such is a caregiver. He is the primary caregiver. But to become a caregiver as a professional caregiver, it requires something here. If anybody doesn't have that thing in them, trust me, they leave within 2 days of the training period starting. And those who stay on, I have got caregivers who have stayed with me for the last 5 years. I push them out, they come back in, because they have taken to the work of a caregiver with a lot of love and care. And I think the only qualifications we need, and I think anybody who even wants to hire a caregiver at home would realize that you can't hire your maid as a caregiver, you can't have your chowkidar as a caregiver, you can't have the bhaiya or your driver as a caregiver. You need somebody who has got that love and affection for a child with autism, and only then caregiving as a challenge wouldn't be there. So I think everybody setting up a home for children with autism must remember that if you are able to overcome this challenge of hiring caregivers, your home will be successfully run. If not, parents would be the unhappiest lot, and an unhappy parent would not want the child to be with you. Thank you.
Very well said. Very well said. Yes, please. I feel, if I may just slightly add to that always, you can teach everything, book smarts, therapy and all, but you can't teach this, no? You have to have it. So when I find that, those are the people I'd like to hire. I'm sure everybody's the same way. You have to find this. So thank you. Stephen, this question is for you. We noticed that you don't do many stemming behaviors now. So how did you overcome that aspect of, or do you?
Well, it's really a matter of working with,
Okay, tell me.
as opposed to overcoming.
Please.
Or
I mean,
getting rid of
sorry, wrong
Yeah.
choice of words.
The terminology.
Yes, yes.
But anyways, I can go to my hotel room and stim. I can engage in visual stims that nobody sees, unless you see me intently looking at something. One thing I like to look at is to see whether two lines are parallel. So right now I'm looking at the door over here and seeing if the inner door is parallel with the outer door, and it's just ever so slightly off. That's how these things are. Buildings settle over time. So little stims like that can be very helpful. Thought stims, you might say, things to think about over and over, perhaps. Imaginary stims, what I mean by that is like running videos, looking at pictures in my mind, running videos in my mind, changing them around. So in that way, there's fewer external stims, and that seems to work out pretty well.
Okay, thank you. So the next one's for you, Joanne. Each individual with autism is different. How do you combine a group of individuals to do the same repetitive movements if they're all different and you're all inclusive?
All right, interesting question, because one, we're not requiring anyone to demonstrate to perfection whatever that movement or sequence or pattern is. The real sole goal is to engage the individual in moving and imitation, which is the basis of learning for all of us, whether we be children or adults. We learn through imitation, watching, and then demonstrating. So there's not a judgment, and there's not we're not keeping score. It's not a report card. So I don't require everyone to be doing the same thing. What happens is, if you came to the demonstration today, where Stephen was with me too, you see that everyone just falls into place by imitating. And that's what we're looking for. So I always say, we're going to raise the bar and ask individuals to come up to it. And wherever they are, we're honoring them. So if they're not doing exactly what I'm doing, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
That's not an issue.
Definitely.
And they may come back the next time, the next week, and they may be doing what I'm doing, or they may not be doing what I'm doing. But it's all good, because I want to create, and you want to create, an environment that's free of judgment, and that it's safe for the individual to enter and be who they are.
Thank you so much. Let's have a big round of applause for our speakers, please. They were so excellent, learned so much. Thank you.